Hello and welcome to the Real EFL preview show with me, your host as ever, Gary Hutchinson. Before we get started, please do remember to drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel to get some really exciting EFL content. We have got some great stuff coming up on the channel. Make sure you don't miss out. This week, as well as the usual managerial sacking, as it seems to be every week, we've got some huge games for you. There might be an international break, but nobody needs the championship. We're finally going to talk properly about Wrexham and their top of the table clash with Stockport. Then we're turning our attentions to League Two and we're looking at the top again. Colchester United go to Bradford in a crucial promotion clash, as well as Notts County and Crewe. Like I said, who needs the championship? Well, I know one man who does love a championship game, and that's Kyle Keneally, and he's my expert pundit for today's show as ever. Kyle, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, we don't need the championship this week because despite the international break, and League One doesn't feel as disrupted as has been the case earlier in the season, and also in the past couple of years. I think there's been weeks where we've seen two games. So to have the amount we do this time is very good. I know it's the time of year. I think the March international break is always less affected. Due to a number of reasons, but yeah, I'm very excited to get into this week. There's some very good games that I've selected, so I can't even say that you've selected. It is all my work picking these games. So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
When you sent me the list over and I was doing my research and I'm like, wow, this is a humdinger of a weekend. Like, who needs Leeds and Sheffield United when you've got Crewe and Notts County? Seriously. We'll start our focus, though, at the bottom of League One. And we are going to talk about the relegation and promotion battles in both divisions. But at the bottom of the League One, there was a sacking that I think was a surprise to probably nobody at all this week. And that was Crawley dispensing with the services of former Newcastle United player Rob Elliott. Now, Crawley are in dire straits. There's no doubt whatsoever about that. They are 12 points from safety, I think, with 9 games to go. They're basically relegated. He had them playing some decent football at times. They were a little bit like the old Kevin Keegan and Ozzy Ardiles Spurs Newcastle sides, where, you know, if they conceded 6, they wanted to score 7, but more often than not, they conceded 4 and scored 3. So, were you surprised to see him go?
Just first off, I know you referenced I don't know if it was deliberate, but the Lincoln game there, the FA Cup game, that was a 4-3 win for Lincoln back at the end of November. I wasn't surprised to see him go. It's always the timing there. I feel like I referenced this quite a few times. It just doesn't really make sense. There's so little of the season left, as you say. They are virtually down. They're not going to stay up. None of the bottom 3 have any real chance of staying up. As you say, they are 12 points adrift, 9 games left. It is not going to happen. The form also suggests it as well. But yeah, it's just the fact that they've left it until now, where they're in a position where survival is virtually impossible. If this decision would have come perhaps a month ago, I know he only was appointed at the start of October, but it feels like if they'd have made that decision a little bit earlier, then they might have given themselves a little bit more of a chance. Look at his record, though, since he's taken over. They rank bottom in numerous departments. They've only won 5 games, which is the worst. 16 losses, 59 goals conceded, which is 12 more than any other team. Again, obviously, with that, they have the lowest goal difference since he's taken over, and 23 points from 29. Again, bottom of League One since his arrival. So they were just never going to stay up. I also think there's a couple of questions to be asked about going forward. They've obviously lost this momentum that they'd had, the unexpected promotion of last season, which just blew everyone out of the water. They were the favourites to go down. They've got into League One. Again, were predicted probably even more so to finish bottom. They might not finish bottom, but they're obviously going to get relegated this season. I do feel a little bit of disappointment that they've lost not a decent chance of such to stay in the division this year, but they did feel there was, particular start to the season, there was a little bit of a chance for them to build something, and even going into next season, I know it isn't always the case as such. When Luton got promoted to the Premier League, and I think that's what people expected the following year in the Championship, for them to build again and go again. And obviously, they're at risk of getting relegated to League One. I don't think that will be the case with Crawley next season, but I certainly don't expect to see him challenging towards the top end of of League Two. I think they'll be set in mid-table next season. But yeah, as I say, there is a little bit of disappointment to be had. I know, as I've mentioned, everyone expected them to get relegated. I just thought they might have perhaps done a little better, and they did have that resurgence, as I think I mentioned last week, or in the last couple of weeks, that every club appeared to have had in the relegation zone, but it hasn't done enough for them. And I think they've just also the clubs outside have just about picked up form. You see Peterborough come back, Bristol Rovers, Northampton all seem to have picked up results. So yeah, it was a timing. As I say, that was my main issue with this. But yeah, I think it was inevitable at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, there's only one team in the bottom 8 that have scored more goals than Crawley, which is Peterborough United, as you would expect. But they've conceded 71, which is more than I think anybody else in the EFL, which is just absolutely unacceptable. I'm actually going to counter your point about the timing. When a manager is dismissed on like February the 2nd or the 3rd or during the transfer window, I think that's bad timing. I think what Crawley have done here is looking at damage limitation. They know they're going down, and if anybody other than any fans of Crawley, Cambridge or Shrewsbury think otherwise, you're wrong. Those 3 teams will be playing in League Two next season. So I think what they've done is let's get somebody else in now, work with some of the players that we've got and try and get ourselves on a little bit of an even footing for next season. And that brings me to the favourite to take over at Crawley. He's a former Lincoln City man, albeit very, very briefly, I think, as caretaker manager. He's recently been dismissed by MK Dons. I mean, Scott Lindsay is going to be the red-hot favourite to head back to Crawley and try and do it again. Do you think that would be a sensible appointment for them?
No, I don't, because I don't think it is.
A bit firm,
I don't think it can happen again. I feel once you've done something, you've built the success. I just don't think it's possible to recreate that sort of thing again. I also think I don't particularly like managers going back to clubs. I know you look at Chris Wilder at Sheffield United, and it's obviously worked magnificently for him, but he's a Sheffield United fan himself, so there's a little bit there. I just don't see it. I can't see the same thing happening next year. It's a model that I think works once. That's why I was a little bit disappointed in terms of the foundations that have been set, and I thought they might have made a little. Not, I feel harsh in saying this. They might have made a little more of a challenge this year. I just thought that they carried a little bit of the momentum on, and I thought they could have done slightly better, which is why I think it's a little bit of an opportunity missed. But going for the same man again, I just can't see it happening. It feasibly could, but I don't think they'll go down that route either, if I'm honest.
Yeah. I mean, Nathan Jones, John Coleman, Keith Hill, Eddie Howe. It just doesn't work, does it, going back to your old club? I don't know who on earth earth ever suggested that.
There are plenty of examples that do work. I don't think this model would create the same success again, unfortunately.
So before we look up the League One table, we've already written off Cambridge, Crawley and Shrewsbury. Burton Albion are 6 points from safety with 9 games to play. Bristol Rovers above. So we've got Burton on 36, Northampton, Bristol Rovers and Peterborough all on 42, and then Wigan 43, Exeter and Mansfield on 44. In terms of relegation, there's one spot really that the teams are playing for. That spot is 21st. Are Burton Albion going to be in it?
I think they'll go down now, to be honest. The gap isn't massive, as you say. It's the only team that are in the relegation zone at the moment that's realistic. I just think that those teams outside will just have enough. I think you can almost discount Peterborough now. I think they've finally turned it around a bit. Mansfield winning the weekend against Barnsley was big. Otherwise, again, they would be one of the sides that you would. I think they would be the team that Burton are trying to catch at the moment. And similarly with the others, Exeter have obviously resurgenced a little bit. I think they're 5 unbeaten, kept clean sheets in their past 2. You would think, being a Lincoln fan, I might say Bristol Rovers to go down, given Lincoln beat them 5-0 at the weekend and 5-0 last season. There's been some massive wins over the past couple of years for Lincoln against the Gas. I just don't see it. I think they had a couple of players out at the weekend. I know Chris Martin wasn't involved. Promise Omocheri's injured. I just think they'll have just enough to stay up. I do see it going for a little bit longer, in terms of there are sort of 5 or 6 teams in there at the moment that could feasibly go down, and they do all need more points to stay up because they're so tightly compact. But it does heavily rely on Burton getting results. I just can't see them getting enough to stay up, unfortunately for them.
Burton's final 9 games include trips to Charlton, visits from Birmingham and Huddersfield, and most crucially, their next 2 away games are against Stockport County and Wrexham. I mean, they are 2 huge matches. Stockport County and Wrexham, coincidentally, are also 2 teams who meet this weekend in League One. That's why we're professional, does it, Kyle? I mean, this is massive. In recent weeks, it's looked like which of Wrexham and Wycombe want automatic promotion less. I thought Wycombe were running away with it. And then the Red Dragons won their huge promotion battle with the Chairboys last weekend. But then, obviously, Wycombe came back in midweek to regain second spot. So before we look at Stockport County, who goes up automatically with Birmingham City?
It's tough. I'm going to say Wrexham. I think probably for the first time this season, I just felt that win at the weekend was absolutely huge. Whoever won that game, I think I'd have had to back, in all honesty, to go up. I know Wycombe are now back second, but their form has been less than convincing since Mike Dodds has come in. They won very late. I don't think they were all that convincing on Tuesday night against a very poor and very empty New York Stadium. Against Rob,
as always.
Say. Yes, yeah, or even more so. I think the attendance was declared as somewhere near 8,000. I think it was probably half that from a lot of the photos I've seen. Yeah, I just think Wrexham have enough now, to be honest. They've just got an ability to grind out results. And that is crucially what you need at this point of the season. I've said it time and time again. I've not watched masses of Wrexham, but the game against Lincoln back in November, and obviously they play Lincoln on the final day, so we will have some inputs potentially in who goes up if it goes down to the final day. Yeah, so when I saw them in November, I don't think they look great. In all honesty, it's not fair to judge a team on one game, and obviously they must be a good side to be third in the division. It's their home record as well that is just absolutely magnificent. When I was looking through, I did the prediction piece for this at the weekend, and I know how good Wrexham's home record has been, but when you just look at the stats, it makes it even better. They lost just once in their final 2 campaigns in the National League. 22 wins out of 23 the year they went up. I think that their only other result in there was a draw as well. So to go a season unbeaten at home is incredible. And they've only lost 5 times at home since promotion back to the EFL. Their 2 defeats this season at home both came back to back as well. Very impressive. They made the step up, and a lot of people, myself included, in the summer said this is kind of where Wrexham not reach their limit as such, but will potentially struggle for a couple of seasons. And by struggle, that doesn't mean get relegated, but I expected them to see them around the mid-table sort of position this season, but they've blown that out of the water. Again, been very tight this month. Just a total of 5 goals in their games in March. February saw that figure 4 times high. There were 21 goals, albeit there were a couple of more games in there. But yeah, when I point to the home record, 33 home goals, second only to Bolton. Only 3 times they've conceded fewer as well than Phil Parkinson's side at home. And if you look at their running, 5 of the bottom 9 of the next 5 games. Exeter, Cambridge, Burton, Wigan and Bristol Rovers. You just have to back them on current form to get the results they need. And I think they might start to put a little bit of a gap between themselves and Wycombe. And then it's Charlton, potentially the team that's maybe the challengers at the moment. They play them on the penultimate weekend of the season. And as I say, it's Lincoln on the last day. But yeah, for me, in a very long-winded way of my preview of the game, that I do think Wrexham will finish in second spot now.
Now, wouldn't it be poignant for them if they did secure championship promotion at Sincilbank on the final game of the season? Do you know why it would be poignant, Kyle?
I don't. I could guess that perhaps the season Lincoln dropped out of the Football League, Wrexham joined them in dropping out, but I'm not sure.
Nope. It's the season that Wrexham dropped out of the Football League. They lost their Football League status at Sincilbank on the final game of the season. So yeah, quite. It could be quite poignant.
How many years was that before I was born?
Oh, Kyle, you've just blotted your copybook now. I would say that must have been I think they had Brian Little in charge. I'm going to say it would be about 2008. And what was
Oh,
really
mate,
ironic,
I was
what was
alive.
you were
I was
alive? Yeah,
alive.
that's
I
brilliant.
would have been 3 by that time, so I can't even use that as an excuse.
And if I remember correctly, which I do because I've just researched it while I was talking to you, we Lincoln City actually lost that game 4-2. Now, what is tied into that is that the year that Lincoln City were relegated out of the Football League in 2011, we were relegated at the same time as Stockport County. They are Wrexham's opponents this weekend. A team I think who have done really well since coming up. Another one that have been ambitious, that have been in the National League, that have kind of them and Stockport have clung to each other as they've come through the divisions. Do they have a chance of joining Birmingham and potentially Wrexham in the Championship? And if they do, does that start with a victory this weekend?
Well, I think if they have any chance of going up automatically, they have to win realistically at the weekend. Stockport's journey has been absolutely sensational. They were one of the few teams. You talk a lot of teams that have dropped into the National League, big clubs over the years, but Stockport went one further, dropped into the National League North, and have rebuilt massively over the past sort of 7-8 years. Their rise has been incredible. I think it does perhaps go under the radar, obviously, because of Wrexham's rise at the same time. And obviously, if Wrexham go on to win promotion this year, they will become the first team ever, I believe, to have won 3 promotions back to back in terms of in the EFL. But Stockport, as I say, are almost, if not more, impressive given where they came from. I'm not going to say without the same financial backings. If you look at their team, they do have some players that you could imagine are on decent amount of money. Their form has been very good as well in 2025. They've only lost once since January the 4th. And there's a little bit of leeway you can give to this defeat. It was Cambridge's first game with Neil Harris in charge. They are 8 wins in 12. And that was after a little bit of a disappointing start to the year. They took 1 point from 6. A draw against Birmingham is nothing to be sniffed at, but then losing to Mansfield. Bad at the FA Cup against Crystal Palace, but recorded 5 straight wins after that started against Reading. And there were a few good results in there. If you look at their away form, they've lost only 5 times away from home, and 3 of them came in the space of 5 away games. So over the course of the season, they've been very, very consistent away from home. So since that little bit of a blip in their away form, they've only lost once in their past 8 away from home. They're averaging less than a goal conceded away. If you just have a little look ahead for them, and if they have got any chance of going up automatically, then their final game against Wycombe will be absolutely huge. It is the beauty of having all the games at the same time on the final day, because it could be very, very big. They've got games against Burton and Exeter, like Wrexham's running to play, and then there's games against Peterborough and Huddersfield over Easter for the Hatters. Huddersfield potentially could be the first of 3 games if they play each other in the playoffs at the end of the season.
So we're taking Birmingham as champions, naturally. We're taking, I think, Wrexham in second. So bold prediction time, because we do predictions here on the Real EFL all of the time. Who joins those 2 in the Championship? I will go first, because that way, if you're going to pick the same team, at least my voice gets some airtime, even though I am the host, not the expert. I'm going for Charlton Athletic. And I actually think Charlton's rise this season has been impressive. They didn't start particularly well. They haven't really been amongst the playoff conversation up until the last couple of months. But Nathan Jones has done a really good job. And don't get me wrong, it's not without a budget. It's not without being able to outspend the likes of Lincoln and Shrewsbury and Cambridge, naturally, because they're a big club. But I think their rise has gone under the radar. I think they look like a side who are capable of going into one-off games in the championship, in the playoffs, for a place in the Championship and getting results. So I'm having Birmingham, Wrexham and Charlton as the 3 teams in the Championship next season. Kyle, who are you having?
Well, I've said that I think you obviously exclude Birmingham from this because they are virtually up already. I've said Wrexham, and I will go with Bolton for my playoff winners, despite the fact they're not even in the playoff places at the moment. I know they lost to Stockport at the weekend. I just think they'll have enough this time around. I think I don't think this is snide on Ian Evatt. I just think they have a manager now that can take them back to the Championship and back to the next level. And I know when I said about the sacking, I feel justified in a way up until the weekend that they had certainly improved. I'm not fully convinced by them at the moment, which is why this is a little bit of a rogue shout. I just feel that if they do get into the playoffs, they will be well set in them. And that seems a little weird given Charlton obviously won the playoff final a few years ago. I think they beat Sunderland, didn't they? 2019, I think. Bolton. What year was it?
Possibly. I don't know. I haven't checked that one. My encyclopedic knowledge doesn't stretch to Charlton Athletic.
I remember the final when I think they went 1-0 down very early on. I'm sure they won it. Patrick Bauer with a last-minute goal. If I remember correctly, I'm certain it was them. And obviously Bolton have had their games against Barnsley in the last two playoff campaigns. Reached Wembley last year, but were beaten by Oxford. But I do back them to go one better this time around.
So there we go. We managed 20 minutes talking about League One, which kind of diminishes League Two. And it's the sort of weekend where League Two deserves a huge, huge focus because there are two absolutely massive games in the division. And one of them that jumps out for me could be the game of the season because it is, again, between two teams who both could easily support League One football. They are both big clubs. My money, of course, is on the team that are 13 unbeaten at the moment. We are talking about Bradford, who are second, against Colchester, who are seventh. Now, last week, I think I shouted Colchester as going up through the playoffs. I wrote an article for the site this week saying that, in my opinion, they should now be the favourites to go up in League Two because they are so in form. It's unbelievable. I mean, I don't think they've lost in the league since the first or second week of weekend of January. If I remember correctly, that was a 2-0 defeat against Accrington. Danny and Nicky Cowley, who I not want to name drop, but I've always been really supportive of everything I've done in the past as well. Fantastic managers. So this is a huge game now. The Bantams have been struck by injury. We're not just talking about Andy Cook now, who's obviously ruled out for the season, but in recent weeks, they've really been struggling. It's hindering their chance of automatic promotion. They've lost their last two games when in reality, reeling Walsall in, which never looked possible, could have been within their grasp. Can that huge support at Valley Parade, championship level support, get them over the line in these final 9 games, Kyle?
I think it can. I think they will be fine. I know this feels like Bradford have gone on this magnificent run and they've just been hit by reality a little bit. And it does feel not all too familiar, but they've been in League Two for a long, long time. And it almost felt that nothing could stop them. And then suddenly they are hit by injuries. When you look, Anthony Sarvacic, Alex Patterson, Bobby Poynton, all expected to miss the game at the weekend. As you say, Andy Cook, out for the rest of the season. There was a lot of sort of interesting discussions around Andy Cook being injured. He was magnificent last season. He's been a very, very good goal scorer at this level for a long, long time. But obviously, when he was injured earlier on I think it was one of the first 2 games of 2025, Bradford has taken 31 points from 14 games this year. So it almost begged the question, are they better without him? Which seems a genuinely... It's just unbelievable to think that, but I think the past couple of games have proved that is not the case. They could have done with someone like him just to nick the odd goal, and it is obviously hurt now with them 3 players I've also mentioned that are out injured. Graham Alexander has played it down though. I think they suffered injuries across all areas of the pitch back in November when they were really struggling, and I think Callum Johnson is expected to return at the weekend as well. Them consecutive defeats, are a little bit concerning, obviously, at this time of the season. And when they were flying so much, it felt like nothing could stop them, particularly the defeat to Tranmere. I think that was their first away win since October. They've scored no goals in them 2 defeats and had just 7 shots on target. But as you referenced in the question, their magnificent home support. This is going to be the highest crowd of the season so far in League Two. I think they've slashed all prices to £5, which is massive credit. They've got one of the cheapest season ticket prices in the division. I would not be surprised if there are attendances like this for their final few games just to get them over the line, and I do feel they will be able to.
It's a bold shout, considering that in their remaining 9 games they play Doncaster, Chesterfield, Notts County, Crewe, Port Vale, and Colchester, all of whom will probably harbour some hopes of clinging onto the playoffs. Although Chesterfield's hopes are very, very faint. That's a particularly tough run in. When you switch your attention over to Colchester United, they play Gillingham, Newport, Salford, Barrow. Not easy games, but certainly the sort of games where you could expect to see them pick up points. Now, we spoke about Colchester last week and their incredible run that's taken them into the playoffs. We always talk, and that's when I say we always, people who like EFL, always talk about the teams that come from nowhere into the playoffs. I'm going back to 2006-07 when Bristol Rovers came from 10th or 11th and met Lincoln City, who had been 3rd, 2nd and 1st all season, turned us over 6-3 because they were on form and we weren't. It's happened time and time again. Are Colchester going to be a League One side next season?
Well, it's sort of similar to the run that Doncaster went on last season. Obviously, ended up in them reaching the playoffs and almost did what Colchester are trying to do in terms of get automatic promotion. That just seemed a question completely unfathomable not so long ago. Sorry. Their final few games, they've got Grimsby, Notts County, Crewe, Doncaster, Salford. I think they were the games that you omitted from that when you said the teams they have left to play. Obviously, very tough games, as I obviously excluded when I was talking about Bradford. I know their run is very, very difficult. It is the time of season. It obviously has to be, and you're going to have to win them sort of games to get yourself into League One next season, or at least into the playoffs. And they are in them now, and they have got a really, really good shot of not only, as I say, playing in the playoffs, but getting automatic promotion, particularly when the likes of AFC Wimbledon, you obviously, as I've mentioned, Bradford have faltered a little bit. Walsall are still not as convincing, obviously, as they were in the first half of the campaign. Your Notts Counties, every club really in that race at the moment seems to have dropped points very, very recently, bar Colchester. 5 straight wins now. It is just magnificent. They're unbeaten since consecutive losses at the start of the year. As you mentioned, lost to Accrington, Swindon as well on New Year's Day. This was also a little bit of a weird quirk. The last time they lost before that sort of mini slump was October the 26th. They lost at Salford and then were knocked out of a cup competition. And that was the same this time around. They lost to Cheltenham in the EFL Trophy and then have not lost since. Also, as I think I mentioned last week, only 2 of their wins have been by more than a 1-goal margin this year. They have won 5 games by 1-0. They are just very, very good at getting results, as I mentioned with Wrexham. Crucially as well, their win at the weekend was one of them games that they did not win by a single goal, which I think is just absolutely cements their position at the moment and is just how informed they are. They are finally, feels harsh for saying they're finally starting to score goals, but they're winning games in a more convincing manner. When you go on that run, you just want results. But now they're in a position where they actually started to open up a little bit more and have won a game 3-0. I think they are my tip for the playoffs. I would not be surprised, though, if they do finish in any of the top 3 places. I'm not going to say first, but they could feasibly finish in them sort of positions. I would not be surprised at all.
Well, time-wise, Kyle, we did have another game on the schedule, but we're actually up on our time now at nearly 30 minutes. So I'm actually, if it's all right with you, going to knock Notts County and Crewe discussion off the list. But we will pick up a little bit of a discussion that will take us over, because I want to know who you think is going to go up automatically and who will go up through the playoffs, and I will make my bold selection. I think Walsall will go up as champions. I think AFC Wimbledon will be promoted in 2nd place. And I think Danny Cowley will get his 2nd automatic promotion from League 2 by guiding Colchester to 3rd by not losing another game. Then when you look in the playoffs, if Bradford can get some players back, they're the team that I fancy most in the playoffs, in a really tight final against a Port Vale side that we haven't mentioned. So I'm going to sit on the fence. I'm going to bum splinters with Bradford and Port Vale, but I'm saying Colchester, Wimbledon and Walsall to be League One sides next season.
I just think not Colchester. I think Walsall have just about got enough points on the board, and I think they should be fine. As I say, I would not be surprised if Colchester do finish inside the top three, but I'm going to stick with Bradford and Doncaster as the other sides. I will then quickly pick up, not to go over Notts County versus Crewe, but it obviously is a big sort of game in League Two this weekend, and obviously they are. Two of the sides also in the top 8 in League Two. Notts County are only 2 points off third, but they're only 4 points ahead of Crewe, which really rubber stamps how tight it is. They've had a really poor March, 3 losses, just a single win at Grimsby, which has kind of hindered the Cods' chances of finishing inside the top 7. Their defensive issues were obviously massively picked up on last term. They conceded 86, which was the only 2 teams in the top 4 division, had a worse defensive record. 39 and 37 is a lot better, but they've really struggled this month. I don't see them now. I would not actually be surprised to see them drop out of the top 7 altogether. They are only virtually a win away from moving back into the top 3, so it seems a really not so much a bold statement, but as I say, it just sums up how League Two is at the moment. And Crewe have a very, very tough run in. They've got Port Vale next week, Grimsby, Bradford the next couple of games. They've got Colchester over Easter. They've got Walsall on the final day. Sky have even selected them to play Cheltenham on a Thursday night, which does give them a little bit more time before their Easter games, which could be a little bit of a benefit. They are games that they would have to win to be back in playoff contention. But I think Crewe will miss out this season, unfortunately. And they've had a pretty inconsistent March. They've drawn the last couple of games. They were hammered by Fleetwood, won at Chesterfield. As I say, this points to a team that are struggling a little bit for form at the moment. 3 of their games in February, as I think I may have mentioned before, ended 3-0. Just the 1 win of those games in that time. To round this off, then, yes, I think that the Crewe will miss out. I think Notts County will just about make it, but will be beaten in the playoffs, and I think Colchester will win the playoffs.
So there we go, Kyle Keneally, a man who will never let research go to waste, no matter what time the podcast is on. You've got to respect that dedication to the cause. Kyle will be back with us next week, so thank you very much for your input, Kyle. So that was whatever episode this is of the Real EFL preview show. We will be back with you next week, where these promotion and relegation pictures will be an awful lot clearer. Please do remember to like this video if you did indeed like it. If you are a Rotherham fan or a Grimsby Town fan, you may not. And remember as well to subscribe to the channel. We have got some great content coming up. In the meantime, please do enjoy this weekend, International Weekend. Gives you a great opportunity if you're the fan of a championship club to get down to a local football league or non-league ground. Take that opportunity. The sun is out. Get on the terraces, have a beer with your mates and enjoy some grassroots football, because this is where it's at, the Real EFL.